My name is Allison Baker, and I, until recently, was the executive director of Socrates Sculpture Park, and am incredibly committed to this neighborhood and to this project and the partnership that this represents between Socrates and Noguchi.
I'm Jenny Dixon. I am the director of the Noguchi Museum. We came up with this project and invited Socrates, as we've worked very closely together, watching this neighborhood change. In spite of a funny economic times, which has not been very pro-development and building, there continues to be a lot of activity in this area. And we anticipate further activity that we think could really change the texture of this unique kind of nodule in New York City, where you have a community of light manufacturing artists and residents who've all kind of lived together right in the immediate proximity of the East River.
Not only addressing the legacy of Isamu Noguchi and Mark DeSuvero and the work that they have done in this area of Long Island City, but the fact that artists helped shape a section of New York City in a really meaningful, specific way, and that we're now at a point 25 years later when the neighborhood is very different than it was when they first came here, and that there is development happening and there is rezoning happening, and we want to make sure that artist voices are still heard in all of that. And we are hoping that by bringing four wonderful teams together, we'll have the resources available to us to present a vision that really could be considered by the city and by the people who live here and by the people who will be living here with this new development.
Change is happening anyways, that there's an interest in continuing to have a kind of positive dialogue environmentally, in terms of culture, in terms of art. Everyone acknowledges that it was really great that Isamu Noguchi stayed there and built the museum, and it was really great that the Athena Foundation and Mark DeSuvero created Socrates. So why should we just stop there? What can we do to build on this?
So the idea was, why don't we bring those people who can think in the same kind of way together to re-envision this particular part of town, so we can make enough noise that the city fathers or mothers or whoever might pay attention and really incorporate and consider some of these ideas as viable.
A voice that's not a competitive voice, but a voice where all these teams work together in kind of a layering and a vision that will be paid attention to. We can't change development, but if we can at least try to encourage as enlightened development as possible, I think that's what we would like to see this project do.
There is this potential to think in very broad and inventive and unexpected ways.
But the purpose of creating a level of art activity around planning was in some ways to mimic what happened at Socrates when Mark DeSuvero first had the idea of taking this kind of unused piece of parkland and repurposing it for people to really be able to work in a landscape. And same with Isamu Noguchi, to basically say, well, I'm not going to wait. I'm going to actively engage right across the street from my studio in what was a gas station in a print building, and I'm going to make a garden and a museum out of it. Both of those things are pieces of planned work.
It's really remarkable that two artists have had such a tremendous impact on a fairly significant corner of New York City. And as Long Island City grows in prominence as a destination for the arts, as a cultural district, it's very, very important to recognize two artists who helped shape this neighborhood and whose legacies live on. And I think a lot of this project has to do with recognizing that history, but also planning for the future, because without that, without a future vision to build on that history, things can change in a way that won't necessarily recognize the presence of artists and the impact that they've had here.
Artist planned. That's what's so key. I mean, Socrates would not exist if it were not for Mark DeSuvero, and this museum would not exist if it were not for Isamu Noguchi. And that's the anchor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. People who live, who work there, people in city planning, people in transportation, people who are in or public servants, people who are citizens, they have a lot of knowledge to give to the process. But how do you make it a process that's interesting for everyone and that doesn't result in something where everyone knows the answer for at the end? Recognizing how important individual vision is in planning, that it catalyzes kind of larger social forces. They make places that then people revalue. And so that's why I think it's so important to have artists and architects working on something on the level of kind of creativity and vision and exhibition and production, because it almost makes a prototype for something so that people understand better what things could look like. But there won't be instant change. It's like we're all participating in a kind of a process of planning that never stops.
I think that's, to me, what this whole idea is about, is a vision that is not tracked, but it doesn't mean it can't be practical.
And find a way to put communities in the position of being both connoisseurs, but also entrepreneurs, and also at the same time be benefactors of great design.
And realizing that we are here and these spaces are what they are because of two incredible artists' minds and thinking and ways of working, it just became like the moment to say, hey, let's bring artists into the process, to the design process, to the thinking process.
Design allows you, because of the process, to really open up new questions.
And that we have such a design-friendly and aware administration. When this will happen again, who knows? And to capture the moment and capture the attention of the city, it's uniquely now.
It is a great time to leverage that kind of support and acknowledgement of the history and the presence and the impact of artists on the city, and really use it as a time to plan for the future.
The opportunity for taking what is not development site, what is not building, but what is in fact the part of the city that belongs to everyone, it has to function very well, and thinking about how it really needs to be used and where it needs to be, 50 years from now. So I think civic action is really about continuing that idea of active planning and charging and supporting for very kind of visionary, talented groups of people to not work in isolation.
Ritwik Chavjamnera, George Chakis, Mary Miss, and Natalie Jaminjenko. They are all artists that are really brilliant.
And they're leading the teams.
And
That's what's
they
so
are
remarkable.
leading the teams. And each team, they were asked to either bring an architect or an urban planner and a scribe. A scribe meaning a writer or somebody who would at least talk about their process and their thinking.
The production of work of all types, writing, art, planning, urban design, analysis, history, preservation, that act itself is planning.
These artists, they're not competing with each other. They're really trying to create a layering of what is possible.
The artists are the ones telling us what they are distilling as the problems, and they're proposing what they think are some solutions.
They represent different generations and working methods and sort of ways of approaching an issue like development and neighborhood evolution.
By the nature of their field, they're all observers, outsiders, critics. They can bring something to the table that it's very hard to do if you're kind of working on this as a kind of commission.
Amy Smith-Stewart is our curator, who's really bringing these four artists' ideas together, which will first be exhibited here in the Noguchi Museum from the mid-October in time for Open House New York through early April. The catalog, which was seen more as a workbook, will be coming out at the end of March, early April. And then there will be an exhibition of actual components, realizable components, maybe prototypes of what's in the exhibition by these 4 artists. And that will mark the 25th anniversary exhibition at Socrates. So there'll be a link, and that will go on through the summer. So it's almost a year-long project. We have a whole series of public programs. We want to help all who are interested in the greater city of New York, and that's what we're trying to mark and draw attention to through this project.